This is Dan Stolbarger. Welcome to our weekly Middle East update. It's August 10th. I'm going to take a look at today and looking back at the last week. I wish I could say that there's more clarity, but it just seems to be muddled and foggy and dark, and just seems to be pretty gloomy out as far as the Middle East goes. So let's take a look at what we call our news bites. Just a reminder that the PDF PowerPoint behind me is available on our YouTube site. So just click the link and you get all of our notes without my head in the way. So news bites, and I'm gonna stay kind of to the script because, as I said, there's so much unclarity. And I just want to make sure that you understand perspectives. Most of all this information that I'm giving to you is coming through Israeli lenses of people that I trust, in a sense. So we start with our news bites. Trump, this just in today, from Trump, Iran's latest demands have to do with wanting compensation. Iran wants compensation for the damage that we caused them, according to Trump. And he said, that's a very interesting idea. Now I'm demanding compensation from them as well. We'll get into this, but this latest MOU, if we can even call it that, seems to be going nowhere. Today in Iran, 1 million of their, let me put it this way, 1 million Iranian rials, that's their dollar in a sense, is less than $1 US. 1 million to $1. The regime that wants to destroy Israel cannot keep its own currency alive. They fund Hezbollah, they fund Hamas, they fund the Houthis, while their own people can't afford bread today. Ted Cruz urges the United States to arm the Iranian protesters in order to overthrow the regime. Cruz also is sharply criticizing these MOUs between Washington and Tehran, basically calling them a disaster and a terrible idea. New York police are warning that Mamdani's attacks on Netanyahu could lead to violence during the Prime Minister's upcoming visit. That's a warning we need to take note of. And then finally, from our news bites, Israel's preparing for the possibilities of carrying out further strikes against Iran on its own. If the U.S. reaches an agreement that brings its war with Tehran to an end, according to Israeli television sources and reports, Israel just may go it alone. So now our major articles this week, and remember I said I want to kind of stay on script. First up is the question mark, end of war. It's coming out now that Trump may consider ending the war by simply declaring victory over Iran without a nuclear deal. According to American officials, Trump believes that Iran's capacity to rebuild its nuclear program has been seriously damaged by the US and Israeli strikes. So he's seriously considering declaring military victory in the 5-month US-Iran war if Tehran, if they will agree to reopen the strait for international shipping, even if there's no nuclear agreement. He's willing to, in a sense, spin it in such a way that gives the U.S. credibility of a massive victory saving him in some eyes for the midterm elections that are coming up. How will this really shake out? Again, one of the chairmen of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, I found this information interesting, has told the Trump administration that it must find an exit strategy from the Iranian war, warning that airstrikes alone cannot achieve the president's stated military objectives. So because of that, is there a backdoor? Is Trump looking for an exit strategy and just hope, pray that he can control the media spin on all of this? And again, that goes back to our last comments from News Bites that Israel is basically saying if the US pulls out without a nuclear agreement, they must go it alone. So again, next article is this, I'm just calling it the MOU 2. It appears to be completely dead in the water. Iran's conflicting demands leave the deal kind of completely out of reach, and the nuclear issue once again is untouched. 3 diplomatic sources have told one of the major news sources in Israel, Hanam, that a deal is not close, and that the draft understandings between Oman and Iran, they fail to meet the U.S. demands for unrestricted passage through the Strait of Hormuz. So again, it seems to be dead in the water. Those contacts between Iran and the United States, alongside of this talk with all other parties, they're not developing into any agreement. And then Bibi breaks rank. Again, let's shift now to Gaza. On the Gaza issue, Bibi Netanyahu explicitly rejected the US-backed 15-point document currently under discussion. His words, Israel rejects this document. The IDF will not carry out any withdrawal until Hamas is disarmed. He clarifies that this means all Hamas weaponry, including heavy, medium, and light weapons. And he says that Israel requires real disarmament, not fake disarmament. Netanyahu declared that as long as he remains, because here's something else that seems to be bubbling up under the surface, this, once again, this concept of a two-state solution, finding moderate parties, right? So Netanyahu, again, facing major elections coming up in Israel, and polls show him behind at this particular time. But Netanyahu has gone on record to declare that as long as he remains prime minister, no Palestinian state will be established in Gaza or Judea or Samaria, saying neither, and he calls it Fatahistan or Hamasistan. They will not come into fruition as long, and this is Bibi, as long as I remain prime minister. And then this whole concept of Hamas being demilitarized. The original goal of Trump's peace plan was not to relocate Hamas's arsenal, it was to eliminate it permanently. Weapons that are stored in warehouses remain weapons that function. Explosives stored today can easily be recovered tomorrow. Rocket factories that are preserved can resume productions. Tunnels that are mapped rather than destroyed can be used again. The issue has never been where Hamas keeps its weapons. The issue has always been that Hamas has access to them. So transferring weapons from a Palestinian group from one to another, that is not demilitarization. And then even more disturbing that's come out is that this new deal from the Board of Peace, the assertion that no weapons shall be transferred or handed to Israel or non-Palestinian group parties, is just absurd. And then we have the formation of what is being now referred to as the Muslim NATO. A Muslim NATO is taking shape. And already, guess who's in the crosshairs? Yeah, Israel. You have Qatar, Pakistan, Turkey, and now Egypt cozying up. A Muslim Brotherhood NATO. The Middle East officials urge states to make the concept here. Again, this is the mindset of jihadis. Middle East officials urge states to make deals with Israel while secretly preparing for war. The goal, reach an agreement, sign it, ceasefire, paper, whatever it may be, and then when the time is right, we'll go back to war. So again, what is really happening here? And it seems like it's same old, okay? So senior and again, Israel officials are making it clear that regarding Gaza, there's no chance that Israel will allow Qatar and Turkey to oversee Israeli conduct in the Gaza Strip. And then this Abdul El-Sayed, okay? This now we're coming, unfortunately, we're coming to the U.S. The significance of his victory in the Michigan Democratic primary goes far beyond the particulars or the results. Now, quote, "It is a chilling indicator of the suicidal lurch of progressive politics, which has weaponized anti-Zionism and hatred of Israel to destroy America and the West." I've given you a slide that's coming up next of a march, and you might think this was in Beirut, or you might think that this is in Tehran, or you might think that this would be in the streets even of Gaza. But the bottom line is this is in Dearborn, Michigan. Again, Abdul El-Sayed, he wants a total U.S. military embargo on the, quote, evil state of Israel, which he believes is guilty of apartheid, genocide, and that simply, in his words, they should not exist. So again, Dearborn, Michigan. All right, a couple more Hamas denials. Just the insanity of all of this. Looking back on October 7th, okay? A Hamas leader being interviewed by Piers Morgan denies that the terror organization deliberately targeted civilians during its October 7th invasion of Israel, despite all the evidence. Now, I'm going to give you the interview. Speaking to Morgan, the Hamas official Hamad claimed the organization had not intentionally targeted civilians October 7th, a claim contradicted by the broad documentaries that are showing Hamas-led terrorists murdering entire families in their home, gunning down civilians at the Nova Music Festival, killing agricultural workers in the field, carrying out other acts of brutality, including rape, torture, mutilation. And so during the interview, Hamad went even further, insisting that Hamas does not commit such crimes. His words, we never kill civilians. Now, Hamas insisted that Morgan repeatedly challenged his assertions, citing that the massacre at the Nova Music Festival and was well documented. Everybody, the world had seen it. So when pressed on that claim, the spokesman for Hamas basically once again said, we did not intentionally kill innocent civilians, but then he offered a partial concession. Think about this concession. Maybe some mistakes happened, he offered. And then he went on to say, he claimed that Hamas had actually offered at the beginning of the war to release all of the civilian hostages, but Israel rejected that proposal. Unbelievable. And then we have, again, what I call fake news. Fake news because the anti-Israel movement, they are inventing their own definition of legal terms just simply to demonize and attack Israel. You know, we're going to hear these words about famine and genocide and ethnic cleansing. And the reality is that house of cards that's been built up through social media, fake news, it needs to crumble and fall. We see it beginning to happen, but it needs to be speeded up dramatically, okay? The claim that there was famine, okay, the UN disproved it with its own data. The claim that there's genocide that's going on. Now we see that the population in Gaza is actually increasing. Doctors, some of whom were affiliated with Hamas, claim to see all sorts of atrocities, such as shooting children at point-blank range. Of course, no evidence anywhere. And genocide scholars and even media like the New York Times repeated these lies without scrutiny, falsely claimed Israel they target children, intentionally starving the Gazans, lie after lie after lie. 3 years of gaslighting with fake AI content and repurposed videos from other conflicts claiming to be from Gaza is all spread to, in a sense, build up and create this genocidal hoax. It is fake. And then last up, sad to say, whether, again, you'll see the slide, okay? The writing on the wall. They didn't read it then, and they're not reading it now. It's happening again. And the words, whether you want to admit it or not, never again is officially a lie. It's happening again. There is not a single thing that happened in Europe that led up to the Holocaust that has not happened in our time at this time. It's tragic, it's terrible, but it's accurate. Okay, Jews being hunted, Jews being harassed, Jews being assaulted and murdered, Jews, businesses being boycotted, anti-Semitism symbols everywhere you look, synagogues being vandalized, Jewish homes and windows being shattered, anti-Semitic politicians rising to power. It is happening today in Western cities, in Europe. Never again happening today. So that's our report from August 10th. Once again, a reminder, simply pray. Pray for the peace of Jerusalem. Pray for the peace in the Middle East. Pray for all of the innocents. We know that God continues to oversee and is on the throne. Biblical prophecy is happening right before our very eyes. And Jesus said, concerning the last days, the end of days, watch, pray, and don't be deceived. God bless you, and shalom.